Batman's Rogues Gallery is one of the best parts of his character. It's filled with so many colorful and entertaining antagonists. Over the next several videos, I, the film watcher, will be recasting Batman's Rogues Gallery, and today is just the ones that have appeared in movies before. Those are the Joker, Catwoman, the Penguin, the Riddler, Two-Face, Bane, Razel al Ghul, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, Harley Quinn, and Talia al Ghul. I know more Batman villains have been in movies like Black Mask, but these are the ones I wanted to get to first. Let's do this. First up is probably the objectively best Batman villain, Kite Man. No, I'm kidding. Can you understand why I'm kidding? Kite Man is awful. He's literally just a parody of Charlie Brown. It is obviously the Joker, who's played by Cesar Romero, who, despite the whole mustache debacle, was great. Jack Nicholson was phenomenal and absolutely should have at least been nominated for an Academy Award. Come on! Mark Hamill, of course, was amazing. Heath Ledger was just incredible in the role and won a well-deserved Oscar. I know Cameron Monaghan didn't appear in any movies, but holy crap was he amazing in the role in Gotham. Aside from Bruce Wayne and Oswald Cobblepot, he was probably my favorite character in that show. When he was Jerome. When they did the whole twin brother thing, it just went a little too far. And then Zach Galifianakis voiced the Joker in the Lego Batman movie, and he was pretty good. Jared Leto, of course, was terrible, and we don't talk about him, especially in the presence of Jokers that are so far superior. And then there's Joaquin Phoenix, who is far and away the greatest Joker of all time. I don't know how they would go about doing a sequel to Joker, but I would love to see more of his version of the character. He absolutely deserved that Oscar. So the most important thing to get right about the Joker is his sense of humor. He's sadistic, crazy, insane, those are all the same things, and enjoys laughing about the darkest things. Everything he does to get a laugh, and he always does. From himself, at least. He thrives in chaos. He's an agent of chaos, if you will. He basically loves Batman and the relationship that they have. I'm pretty sure he likes Batman more than Harley Quinn. He greatly enjoys everything he does and doesn't like when people mess up his jokes. I had a few names down, the first being James McAvoy. I think he'd be a little too recognizable in the role, plus he'd be too grounded as well. The Joker should be over-the-top insane and funny in a sick way, not grounded and serious. James Franco is another name, but I think he'd go a little too over-the-top. I definitely thought about Bo Burnham, but I think he'd be a little too dry for the role. And believe it or not, I considered Tommy Wiseau for the part, and no, I did not base that decision off of that audition tape that he did a few years ago. Also, as great as Willem Dafoe would be, I think he's just a little too old to work with Adam Driver, who is 37, as Batman. That said, I went with an actor that I originally discredited and had cast as Scarecrow, and that is Robert Sheehan. He played the role of Klaus in the Umbrella Academy, and in that show, especially the first season, he was absolutely amazing. He pulled off the insanity and that sadistically violent nature that the Joker needs to have. He was also just really funny. By far the funniest character on the show. He gave an absolutely incredible performance. He has that thin and potentially crazy-looking face as well. As just a person, he has a great sense of style, and I think that could be incorporated into the Joker if they wanted to have some variety in costumes, which they should. I mean, as great as Heath Ledger was, he kind of just wore that same dirty-looking coat. Sheehan also managed to look sick for the entirety of the first season, so he's clearly not opposed to heavy makeup. I also like that he's not super well known, so he can kind of just be the Joker and not an actor giving a performance. He disappears and deserves to be a better known actor. He'd be an amazing Joker. Next up is Catwoman, one of my personal favorite Batman villains, mainly due to her relationship with the Dark Knight, and not just a romantic one. She was played by Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt, and Lee Merriweather in the 60s, Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns, and she was fabulous, Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight Rises, and she was decent, and then Cameron Bicondova, I think that's how you pronounce her name, in Gotham, who was just really incredible. The character is being played by Zoe Kravitz in The Batman, which is weird, because Kravitz voiced her in the Lego Batman movie, and her one line is, meow, meow. Clever. Anyway, I really love this character. She has a magnetic energy to her that she uses to her advantage. Her appearance is basically a weapon, but certainly not more so than her cat-like skills. She's an insane acrobat. She also has a very interesting moral compass, putting her core values in direct conflict with Batman's. She has no problem killing people and often switches from villain to hero at the drop of a hat. She's a criminal, but she has some good values, is the point of this. She also needs a voice and a personality that just kind of draws you in. So I originally had Natalie Dormer for this, but she was just kind of missing something. Also, I've only seen her in Hunger Games, so there's that. So that said, I went with Ruth Nega. She was actually nominated for an Oscar a few years back. She lost to Emma Stone from that stupid La La Land movie, but she was also up against Meryl Streep, Isabelle Huppert, and Natalie Portman. and two of those are Oscar winners. I've only seen her in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in which she was great. She played Raina, doesn't have a last name, a woman with no moral compass and conflicting values to the show's protagonists. She absolutely has the voice for this role. It's sort of intoxicating, which absolutely works for Catwoman, but it's that moral compass that I just keep thinking about. She can play someone who only does things for her own advantage, and someone who gets mixed up in nefarious dealings. Catwoman is also fiercely intelligent, and Nega could play that person who's always one step ahead, even with Batman. She's the only person who really challenges the Caped Crusader, and the one who's unpredictable, and it's probably because they think so alike. She's 39, which works with Adam Driver, who is 37. He also did some action in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so we know she can do that, even if there's no record of her having had any dance training. She'd be a phenomenal Catwoman. Next up is the Penguin. I think Burgess Meredith was great, and Danny DeVito was phenomenal, but the best one by far was Robin Lord Taylor from Gotham. He just struck the balance between disgusting and sophisticated so perfectly, so this actor has to do the same thing. I love this character so much. The Penguin is a savvy businessman, only in crime for the money. Most of the time he tries to keep a businessman personality, but he often gets angry and can go into fits of rage. He's a greedy, creepy, unsettling man who can be kind of disgusting. The actor needs to have a little bit of insanity coming through. I considered Andy Serkis because he would literally be perfect when he's playing Alfred in the Batman, so it would never happen. I went with an actor that I had down as Scarecrow for the longest time, and then the day before this video, I discovered that he would be much better as the Penguin. So the actor I've selected is Timothy Spall. He's no stranger to playing creepy characters. He was Wormtail in the Harry Potter films, and he perfectly captured the disgustingness of that character. He was also Beetle Bamford in the film version of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. He was just so delightfully despicable. He's usually played henchman, like in Enchanted and the previous two roles I mentioned, but I'd like to see him step into the spotlight as a villain. Now, he's known for playing heavier characters, but he has slimmed down a little bit. If he wanted to maintain his current physicality, they could just stick him in a fat suit. He's 5'7", which works for the Penguin. He has that slimy voice and look for the role. He'd bring a great level of creepiness here. Next up is the Riddler. I don't know why I said that. I don't know. Frank Gorshan was excellent, and Jim Carrey hammed it up. Weirdly, he was voiced by Conan O'Brien in the Lego Batman movie, which is interesting. But like Penguin, the best version of this character by far comes from Gotham, in which Riddler is played by Corey Michael Smith. However, he'll mostly be overtaken by Paul Dano in the Batman, who just looks so cool. I like the idea of a combination between Jim Carrey and what they seem to be going for with Dano. The Riddler is an extremely intelligent man, leaving clues with very subtle references that only Batman is able to get. Riddler has to be meticulous in his ways, but he also has to have a certain level of theatricality. I don't want to go full on Jim Carrey, but he should be a little over the top. I considered a number of people, but I eventually settled on Neil Patrick Harris. He is one of the most theatrical people in entertainment. He was wonderful in Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events, and without question the best part of that show. He manages to be hilariously entertaining and menacingly awesome at the same time. You need to play a little bit smarter of a character here, though. Harris can also really dance if they want to go super over the top. He'd be an amazing Riddler. Next up is Razel al Ghul, the Demon's Head. Now, I think Liam Neeson did a great job in this role, but I wasn't really a fan of the character in Gotham. He just wasn't menacing in the least. I just couldn't buy him. But as good as Neeson was, he didn't really line up with the true ethnicity of the character. Razel al Ghul translates to the Demon's Head in Arabic, so ideally we'd want an Arabian actor in this role. Razel al Ghul is mysterious, calculating, and a cold-hearted man. He's the leader of the League of Assassins and the owner of the Lazarus Pit. He's lived for over 500 years, so the actor should be older while still being able to move and really act. We need someone with that thin, slanted, villainous face and the deep, measured, and cold voice that are basically trademarks of Razel al Ghul. I went with F. Murray Abraham. Now, he recently appeared in the Netflix film Things Heard and Seen, which is one of the weirdest and most bizarre movies I've ever seen, and not in a good way. I'm more looking at his voice performance in How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, in which he played the villain, Gribble. That character was an evil mastermind. His face and voice match this character perfectly. Now, he is 81, which is probably a little too old to play Roz, but he was fairly mobile in Things Heard and Seen, as well as in the recent remake of Lady and the Tramp. And he must have been at least 80 when they were filming that. He has that meticulous and calculating nature that this character has to have. He'd be a wonderful Ra's al Ghul. Next is his daughter, Talia. No, I don't really care for the Talia twist in Dark Knight Rises. She's a villain for like 5 minutes and then dies. And she takes the place of Bane, who is an actually cool villain. Marion Cotillard was good, but the character just feels shoved in there. What a waste of a great actress, who honestly would be a decent Catwoman if she hadn't already played Talia. Now, this is an interesting character. She's very morally conflicted, caught between her devotion and loyalty to her father and her love for Batman. She has to be younger than Batman by at least 10 years. Roz raised her to have the same mindset as he, as well as teaching her to be an expert martial artist. The actress has to be skilled in at least dancing so you could transfer it to action. That said, I went with Amita Suman. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She's a relatively unknown actress, having only appeared in TV shows at this point in her career. However, she has quite a bit of talent. I've only seen her in Netflix's Shadow and Bone, which wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but she was very good in it. She played a character with an aversion to killing people, which Talia probably doesn't have, but she could definitely sell that moral conflict. She also did some action and plenty of dancing in that show, so we know she can do that. She'd be a great fit for this character. Next up is Scarecrow, the Master of Fear. He was a professor of psychology, but after developing a fear gas, became a fear-obsessed criminal. I enjoyed Cillian Murphy in this role, even if he wasn't totally comic accurate, which I don't really care about, to be honest. Scarecrow has to be very unsettling and disturbing. He's the Master of Fear, so he has to be, scary. The actor has to have a creepy voice, look, and presence. He should also look a little weak, bordering on unhealthy, like an actual Scarecrow. I decided upon Dan Stevens. He's been excellent in everything I've seen him in. I'm looking at 2 films specifically. The Man Who Invented Christmas, where he played Charles Dickens, a respected man with some crazy tendencies, and The Call of the Wild, where he played this insane villain who just wanted gold. He's a great actor and can absolutely disappear into any role he's in. He can have a creepy voice and look if he wants to. He could sell the overall disturbing nature of this character with ease. He's 6'2", which works for Scarecrow if he's going to be a real physical threat. Siemens is also experienced in mocap, so he can do the movements for the role. He'd be an awesome Scarecrow. Next up is Poison Ivy. Now, Uma Thurman is actually a pretty good choice for this role, but unfortunately, Batman and Robin sucks. Now, Poison Ivy is seductive. She's flirtatious, and she really uses her appearance to her advantage, more so than Catwoman. There's not really a good way to have a grounded version of the character, but I think they could do something cool with her. She can make people bend to her will, even the strongest of men. Batman, being the greatest physical specimen on planet Earth, develops an immunity, of course, but even he can't resist her at first. Now, a more recent development is the romantic relationship between Ivy and Harley Quinn, and I think they should play a part in this story. I thought about a whole lot of people for this role. Among them were Natalia Dyer, Helena Bonham Carter, and Megan Fox. I thought about Rachel McAdams, but I eventually decided on Mila Kunis. I've only seen her in one film, Black Swan, and holy shark-repellent Batman, she stole every scene she was in. She managed to be ridiculously seductive. In fact, they actually point this out in that film. She had this sultry charm to her that would really work for Poison Ivy. She has the voice and the look for this role. She'd also work well in a group if they wanted to do the sirens here. I think Mila Kunis would be a fantastic Poison Ivy. Next we have Mr. Freeze. Like Ivy, there's not much of a way to do a grounded Mr. Freeze, so my solution is just to make his suit look awesome. Kind of like a Hulkbuster type build. It would at the very least be better than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wow, did he suck. Also, Freeze should be made a sympathetic character. His wife is cryogenically frozen, and he spent his entire career trying to get her out. This resulted in him having to be stuck in a constant state of cryogenic frigidness. That is a real word. He could be a joke, or he could be kind of awesome. I struggled with this one, but I eventually settled on Mark Strong. He was excellent as Dr. Savannah in Shazam, or Savannah, I don't care. That character was a little goofy, but he had that sympathetic side that needs to be explored. He was also Frank D'Amico in Kick-Ass, and he was really good at being the menacing villain in that film. He was very cold. Ha! Get it? Yeah, whatever. And heartless, and that's kind of what Mr. Freeze has to be. Mark Strong also just looks like the character. He has the thinner face and deadly-looking eyes necessary, plus he's bald. He'd be an excellent Mr. Freeze. Next up, we have Harley Quinn. She was introduced in Batman the Animated Series and has since become a fan favorite. Margot Robbie was absolutely amazing in this role. So Harley is the girlfriend of the Joker, and he doesn't really see her as anything more than a henchwoman, even though she absolutely loves the crap out of him. Harley was a psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum, but upon treating the Joker, she was driven insane by mad lust for him. She's crazy, but really fun. She becomes a member of the Sirens, and Catwoman and Ivy convince her to break up with the Joker. She has to discover at some point that she's in a completely one-sided and abusive relationship, and that the Joker doesn't see her as anything more than an obedient lackey. Harley has to be insane and have very bizarre and out-of-whack morals. She's gotta be weird. There's a lot of fun for the actress playing her to just take this character to some very energetic levels. Now, I think she should be a little darker and a little more creepy than Margot Robbie's version, just to distance the interpretations. Again, I'd like to have the romance between Harley and Ivy. I would love to cast Annie Murphy from Schitt's Creek and Kevin Can F himself. But as amazing as she'd be, I feel like she'd be just a little too similar to Margot Robbie's take. I mean, just look at the two of them. They look almost identical. Now, if she were 20 years younger, Marissa Tomei would be my choice due to her performance in My Cousin Vinny, but unfortunately she's 56 years old, which really doesn't work, especially with Robert Sheehan as Joker, because he's 33. With that said, I went with Aubrey Plaza. She was perfect in Parks and Recreation. She was hilarious and insane, and had that perfect dark sense of humor that Harley should have. She's 37, which works with Sheehan. She also appeared in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and she was really funny. She has darker roles, too. She voiced Eska in The Legend of Korra, and that's one of the best characters from that show. She's hilarious. She was sadistic, violent, obsessive, and hilarious, all of which Harley Quinn is. In fact, in some of the Cats interviews for Parks and Recreation and the bonus features, she did hers standing in a tree, talking about literally everything except the subject at hand. She is unpredictable and weird in the best way possible. She'd be wonderful as Harley Quinn. Next is Two-Face. Now, personally, I don't think that there's a great or even good version of Two-Face in the movies. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones was just completely ridiculous, and while Aaron Eckhart was a solid Harvey Dent, his turn to Two-Face made absolutely no sense. He wasn't splashed with mind-changing acid, his face was just blown up. Why would the fact that his girlfriend died cause him to become a completely different person? It's not like it changed his mind about things, he literally became an entirely new person. It makes so little sense. Now, Billy D. Williams would have been amazing, and I love that he was Two-Face in the Lego Batman movie, but I really wish he'd gotten to do a serious version of the character. Anyway, I thought long and hard about this. My main choice would be Woody Harrelson, but at 60 years old, he's just too old to be Harvey Dent alongside Adam Driver's Batman. He'd only work with a Batman that's been around for a while, like Josh Brolin. So I want to do Two-Face's origin story, and Harrelson just isn't right for that. I thought about certain actors like Chiwetel Ejiofor, Pedro Pascal, David Oyelowo, and even Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, Harvey Dent is a good man. He's a brilliant lawyer, and he does everything he possibly can to make sure the people of Gotham are taken care of. However, during the trial of Sal Maroni, Maroni himself splashes acid on Dent's face, causing half his body and mind to warp. He becomes Two-Face, a criminal obsessed with the number 2 who uses coins to make his decisions. I'd like this to be in a similar way to Gollum's internal conflict in the Lord of the Rings films. Two-Face debating with himself, and those scenes are filmed in a way that makes it look like two people is talking. This is what happened in the sequel to The Long Halloween, Dark Victory, but it's never really been done in a movie before. It'd be a very interesting stance to take this character. That being said, I think that the man to play Two-Face is Wyatt Russell. He, of course, played John Walker in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and despite my problems with the handling of that character in the show, I can't deny that this dude has bucket loads of talent. It would have been so easy for him to play Walker as an overly aggressive and bloodthirsty nationalist, or as a conceited and entitled buffoon. And while that still would have been fine, the way he played Walker turned him into a real person who felt the pressures of holding the shield, despite clearly being the wrong person to do so. He can be aggressive, but he can also just be a reasonable, talented, and intelligent person, and he balanced that wonderfully. He was also in Woman in the Window, which came out a couple months ago. Of all the actors I've cast in any of these roles, I think he's the one who would work best with Robert Pattinson's Batman, but he could work with Adam Driver's Batman too. He's 35, which works nicely for the Driver option, or the Pattinson option, honestly. He's also 6'2" and well-built, so if they wanted to have Two-Face fight, he could absolutely do it. Wyatt Russell would be an incredible Two-Face. Finally, we have Bane. Bane is one of my favorite Batman villains of all time. I really, really, really like Tom Hardy in the role, even if his death is the stupidest thing ever. I even love the voice that he does. This bomb is armed, this bomb is mobile, and the identity of the trigger man is a mystery. Sorry, I couldn't can't resist. Also, Bane was in Batman and Robin. So Bane is not a simple thug who yells Bane all the time. I'm going to get this out of the way before I get to the actual casting. I have heard a whole lot of people saying that Dave Bautista would be a great Bane. And I kind of disagree. Bautista might look a lot like Bane. He may have an awesomely brutal face, a shredded body, and an epic voice. But I'm sorry, I just couldn't buy him as Bane. He's too recognizable, and he's way too funny. I've heard people cite Guardians of the Galaxy to prove that he'd be a good Bane. How do Drax and Bane have anything in common? Looks just aren't enough for this character. Bane is extremely complex. So he was imprisoned at a young age for the sins of his mother, which doesn't really make sense when you think about it. Anyway, so he eventually leads the other inmates of Peñaduro in a revolution, and they go around conquering weak and corrupt territories. Naturally, he sets his sights on the corrupt Gotham. And then he meets Batman. So Bane decides to release every inmate from Arkham Asylum and thus weaken Batman physically and mentally. Once this goes on for a while, Bane beats Batman to a bloody pulp and ends up breaking his back. Bane is a brilliant man. He's a criminal mastermind and the greatest terrorist in the world. I'm not saying terrorists are good. They're not. I'm saying Bane is good at being one. He's meticulous, calculating, and thinks everything through, similarly to Batman. He's very manipulative and extremely savage. He will crush someone's head like he should do with the Warden of Peñaduro. That would be awesome. Think about it. Bane also has to have an incredible build, 6'8" at the very least. You should also have an awesome voice that stands out as well. Now, I'm actually going to cast 2 actors for Bane, one to perform physically and one to do the voice work, because it's very hard to find someone with the combination. Now, it shouldn't be the physical actor moving his mouth and the voice actor dubbing it over. You should have some sort of voice box or metal mask that maybe alters his voice, or, I don't know, maybe you just can't see his mouth or something. Anyway, so for the physical actor, I wanted someone who was tall and looked menacing. I also don't think Bane necessarily needs to be shredded. I mean, he doesn't need to have like a Dwayne Johnson build. He should be extremely muscular, though. So I went with, I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, Thor Julius Bjornson. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, but I have seen the Mountains battle with Pedro Pascal's character, and it was awesome. After seeing that, I was tempted to just cast him and only him in this role, but I still wanted to have a different voice. Anyway, this dude is awesome. He's 6'9" and ripped. He's a huge dude. He can also just look terrifying. He checks out all the boxes here. And then for the voice, I wanted someone who should stand out and feel terrifying. It has to be really deep and menacing. That said, Bane should be voiced by Javier Bardem. He has an excellent voice. It's deep, rich, and menacing. He actually won an Oscar for No Country for Old Men, which I haven't seen in its entirety, but I can tell from the 10-second clip that I did see that he was fantastic. I've only seen him in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which isn't that great of a source to cite, but he was really good in that movie. It's not a great movie, but he was excellent in it. His voice is just spectacular. With Bjornson's build and Bardem's voice, this version of Bane could be a villain for the ages. And that's it. Wow, that was a lot of talking. Woo! So what did you guys think of my decisions? I'll be getting to some of the other villains in the next several videos, which may take a little bit, as you can see from the space between the last recasting video and this one. But anyway, thank you for watching, and keep calm and watch out.